My hands were shaking as I stared at my phone. 3 missed calls from Gerald, my lawyer. Then a text message that made my blood run cold. Catherine, call me now. Don't go to your daughter's house. I mean it. I was literally putting on my coat, about to drive to Lindsay's place in Springbank for Sunday dinner. My daughter had been so insistent this week. Mom, you never come over anymore. The kids miss you. I'm making your favorite pot roast. How could I say no to that? But Gerald's text changed everything. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments what time it is where you're watching from. I sat back down on my leather couch, the one Robert and I picked out 32 years ago when we first bought this house in Mount Royal. My late husband would know what to do. He always did. But he'd been gone for years now, and I'd been navigating this world alone ever since. The house felt too big sometimes, too quiet. But it was mine. It was ours. Every corner held a memory. The kitchen where Robert would make his terrible pancakes on Saturday mornings. The living room where we'd watch the snow fall through the bay windows. The garden where we'd planted roses together, his hands covering mine as we pressed each bulb into the earth. I dialed Gerald's number with trembling fingers. Catherine. His voice was tight, professional, but I could hear the concern underneath. Where are you right now? Are you alone? I'm at home. Gerald, what's going on? You're scaring me. Good. Stay there. Lock your doors. I'm coming over. We need to talk face to face, and you need to see some documents I received this morning. Lock my doors. In broad daylight, in my own neighborhood where I'd lived for 3 decades. Something was very, very wrong. 20 minutes felt like 20 hours. I made tea, but my hands were shaking too much to drink it. I kept looking at my phone, at Lindsay's last text from yesterday. Love you, Mom. Can't wait to see you Sunday. Had she already known then? Had she been planning this while texting me heart emojis? Finally, Gerald's car pulled into my driveway. He came in carrying a leather briefcase, his expression grave. We sat at my dining table, the same table where Lindsay had done her homework as a child, where Robert and I had hosted dinner parties, where we'd celebrated birthdays and anniversaries. Gerald spread papers between us like they were evidence at a crime scene, which I suppose they were. Catherine, 3 days ago, your daughter Lindsay and her husband Derek filed a petition with the Court of Queen's Bench. He paused, and I could see him choosing his words carefully. They're applying to have you declared mentally incompetent. They want to become your legal guardians and take control of all your assets. The words didn't make sense at first. They were like a foreign language. Mentally incompetent. Me, I was 67, not 97. I volunteered at the Calgary Food Bank every Tuesday. I managed my own investments, balanced my checkbook, paid my bills on time. I'd just renewed my driver's license last month and passed with flying colors. That's insane, I finally managed to say. My voice sounded strange, distant. I'm not incompetent. I'm not confused. I'm not declining. I go to yoga twice a week. I read 3 books last month. I help organize the community garden. Why would they do this? But even as I asked the question, a horrible understanding was beginning to dawn. Gerald slid another document toward me. Because of this, your house is now worth approximately $2.4 million. Your investment portfolio is valued at $1.8 million. Your pension and savings bring your total estate to just over $5 million. I knew I was comfortable. Robert and I had worked hard our entire lives. He'd spent 35 years as a petroleum engineer, working his way up from field positions to senior management. I'd been a school administrator for 30 years, managing budgets and people and programs. We'd saved carefully, invested wisely, lived below our means. We'd paid off our house 10 years before Robert died. We'd built something solid, something secure. But I'd never thought of it as $5 million. I'd thought of it as our life's work, our security, our legacy. Lindsay knows about the house value, I said slowly. We talked about the Calgary real estate market last Christmas. She'd been asking about property values in Mount Royal. I'd thought she was just making conversation. She'd joked that I was sitting on a gold mine. I'd laughed it off. It wasn't a joke, Catherine. Gerald opened his laptop and turned it toward me. Look at this. Your daughter and Derek are in serious financial trouble. He showed me everything. Bank statements, credit card bills, mortgage documents, legal filings, the $650,000 mortgage on their massive house in Springbank Hills, the $400,000 they'd lost when Derek convinced Lindsay to invest in his business partner's cryptocurrency venture. Some scheme that promised massive returns and delivered nothing but losses. Josh's private school fees at Weber Academy, $38,000 a year. Their 2 luxury cars, leased at $1,800 a month each. Their property taxes, $22,000 annually. Country club memberships. Vacations they couldn't afford. A lifestyle built entirely on debt and desperation. How do you know all this? I asked. Because their financial situation is part of their petition. They're arguing that they need to protect your assets from your declining mental state before you make irresponsible decisions with your money. And Catherine, he looked at me with something that felt like pity. They've been building a case against you for at least 6 months, maybe longer. He showed me the evidence. Photos of me at Safeway, apparently looking confused in the cereal aisle. But I'd just been trying to find the brand Robert used to buy, the one with the blue box. They'd moved it to a different aisle and I'd been searching. A statement from their family doctor, Dr. Patel, noting that I'd seemed disoriented during a checkup last month. But I'd had a terrible cold that day, a fever of 101 degrees. I'd forgotten what medication I was already taking because my head had been pounding and I'd felt awful. A recorded conversation where I allegedly couldn't remember my own phone number. But I'd been giving them my old number, the landline we'd had for 30 years before I switched to a cell phone last year. The new number still felt strange to me. Every normal moment of an aging person's life, twisted and manipulated and presented as evidence of incompetence. Every small confusion, every minor forgetfulness, every perfectly understandable mistake, documented and weaponized against me. I thought about Robert then. How we'd met at university, 2 kids from working-class families, determined to build something better. How we'd saved for years to afford the down payment on this house. How we'd chosen every piece of furniture together, argued playfully about paint colors, planted the garden side by side. How we'd raised Lindsay here, taught her our values, or thought we had. How he'd held my hand during her wedding 10 years ago, tears streaming down his face, so proud of the woman she'd become. What would he say if he knew what she was doing now? The thought made my chest physically ache. But this is fraud, I said, my voice coming out hollow and broken. This is elder abuse. Yes, it is. And unfortunately, Catherine, it's becoming increasingly common. Adult children going after their parents' estates before they die. The courts are seeing more and more of these cases. People looking at their parents and seeing dollar signs instead of human beings. Seeing assets instead of the people who raised them, who sacrificed for them, who loved them unconditionally. Gerald closed his laptop and looked at me directly. The hearing is scheduled for 2 weeks from now. They moved fast, probably hoping to catch you off guard. Hoping you wouldn't have time to mount a proper defense. What happens if they win? My voice was barely a whisper. They become your legal guardians. They control your bank accounts, your investments, your house. They can sell your property, move you into assisted living, make all your medical decisions. You'd essentially lose your autonomy completely. You'd become a legal child again, dependent on their goodwill and mercy. And Catherine, he leaned forward, based on their financial situation and what I've seen in the petition, I'd estimate they'd have your house on the market within 3 months. The house where Robert and I had built our life. Where we'd hosted Christmas dinners with homemade tertiary and butter tarts. Where we'd celebrated birthdays and graduations and anniversaries. Where we'd planted the garden together. His hands always so much steadier than mine. Where Lindsay had taken her first steps, spoken her first words, learned to ride a bike in the driveway. Where Robert had taken his last breath 4 years ago, in our bedroom upstairs, holding my hand and telling me he loved me one final time. They can't do this, I whispered. Lindsay wouldn't. She's my daughter. She's my baby. I'm sorry, Catherine, but the evidence suggests otherwise. They've been planning this very carefully. What do I do? I felt lost, betrayed, angry, and terrified all at once. It was like standing on solid ground and suddenly discovering it was quicksand. Everything I'd thought was stable and secure was crumbling beneath my feet. If you're still here with me, thank you for listening. Tell me in the comments if you've ever experienced something even remotely similar. Gerald straightened up, his expression shifting from sympathetic to strategic. We fight back. And we fight smart. But Catherine, I need to know, are you prepared for what this might mean? This isn't just a legal battle. This is going to tear your family apart. Whatever relationship you have with Lindsay, whatever you hope might still be salvageable, this will end it. Are you ready for that? I thought about Lindsay as a little girl. Her bright eyes and infectious laugh. How she'd climb into my lap every night and ask me to read just one more story. How she'd cried at Robert's funeral, holding on to me like I was her anchor in a storm. How she'd told me she loved me just last week, her voice warm and sweet through the phone. But then I thought about what she was trying to do now. The betrayal, the calculated deception, the cold willingness to destroy her own mother's dignity and independence for money. The months of planning and documenting and manipulating. Tell me what we need to do. Over the next week, I followed Gerald's instructions to the letter. I kept detailed journals, noting everything from the time I woke up to the time I went to bed. My morning crossword puzzle times, always under 15 minutes. My volunteer shifts at the Calgary Food Bank, where I organized donations and managed inventory. My book club meetings, where I led discussions on Margaret Atwood and Alice Munro. My yoga classes, where I could still do poses women half my age struggled with. Every single thing that proved I was competent, capable, and completely in control of my faculties. I met with Dr. Sarah Chen, a geriatric psychiatrist Gerald recommended. She put me through exhaustive cognitive tests over 3 long sessions. Memory tests, reasoning puzzles, problem-solving scenarios, questions about current events, personal history, mathematical calculations. She tested my ability to manage finances, make decisions, understand complex information. After the 3rd session, she looked at me with something like relief. Mrs. Williams, I can state with complete professional confidence that you show no signs of cognitive decline, dementia, or mental incompetence. Your memory is excellent. Your reasoning is sharp. Your judgment is sound. In fact, you scored in the 93rd percentile for your age group. You're sharper than most people decades younger. But the hardest part, the part that made me feel physically sick, was pretending everything was normal with Lindsay. She called me on Wednesday, her voice bright and cheerful. Mom, I'm so sorry about Sunday. Derek's mother had a fall and we had to rush over to Medicine Hat. Can we reschedule for this weekend? I need to see you. Of course, sweetheart, I said, the endearment tasting like poison in my mouth. Is she okay? Oh, she's fine. You know how dramatic she can be. She barely twisted her ankle and acted like it was broken. Lindsay laughed, that familiar sound that had once filled me with joy and now just made me feel hollow. Actually, Mom, while I have you, Derek and I wanted to talk to you about setting up a trust, you know, for estate planning, just to make sure everything's organized properly. In case, well, you know, we're not getting any younger. None of us are. And it would give us all peace of mind to know everything's in order. She was still trying. Even now, even knowing I had a lawyer, even with the court date looming, she was still trying to manipulate me into giving her legal control voluntarily, trying to make it sound like she was doing me a favor. That sounds like a good idea, I said carefully, each word an effort. Let me think about it. Let me talk to my financial advisor. Don't think too long, Mom. These things are time sensitive. You never know what might happen. We need to act while you're still, you know, sharp enough to make these decisions properly. Was that a threat? Was she suggesting I was already declining? I couldn't even tell anymore. Everything felt twisted and dangerous. Every word felt like it had hidden meanings, like she was setting traps I couldn't see. That night, unable to sleep, I sat in Robert's study. I'd kept it exactly as he'd left it. His books on the shelves, his reading glasses on the desk, his favorite coffee mug, the one Lindsay had given him years ago with "World's Best Dad" printed on it. The irony was almost unbearable. I opened his desk drawer and found old photos. Lindsay as a baby, her tiny hand wrapped around Robert's finger. Lindsay on her first day of school, gap-toothed smile and pigtails. Lindsay at her high school graduation, beautiful and bright and full of promise. Where had that girl gone? What had happened to turn her into someone who could do this to her own mother? Then my phone rang. It was Josh, my 15-year-old grandson. "Grandma Catherine, can I come over? I need to talk to you alone." His voice was shaking. "Of course, Josh, is everything okay? I need to see you. Please, don't tell Mom and Dad I'm coming." Something in his voice scared me. 20 minutes later, he arrived on his bicycle, his face flushed from the ride and streaked with tears. He looked terrified. "Grandma, I need to show you something. But you have to promise not to tell Mom and Dad that I told you. I could lose everything if they find out." My heart was pounding. "Josh, what is it? What's wrong?" He pulled out his phone with shaking hands. "I heard them talking last week. Mom and Dad. They didn't know I was home. I'd come back early from my friend's house because I'd forgotten my math homework. I heard them in the study and I don't know why, but something made me record it. I'm sorry. I know it's wrong to record people without permission. But after I heard what they were saying, I knew you needed to know. I knew I had to tell you." He hit play, and my daughter's voice filled my quiet kitchen, shattering what was left of my heart. "I'm telling you, Derek, the hearing is in 2 weeks. Gerald Morrison might be her lawyer, but we have Dr. Patel's statement. We have the photos. We have everything documented. Judge Henderson is hearing the case and she's sympathetic to families trying to protect elderly parents. We've got this." Derek's voice responded, cold and calculating. "What if your mom fights it? What if she gets an independent evaluation?" "With what?" Lindsay's laugh was harsh. "We've been systematic. Every instance of forgetfulness. Every missed appointment. Every time she seemed confused. The judge will see a clear pattern of cognitive decline. And even if she tries to fight, Mom doesn't understand how expensive this will be. It'll cost her hundreds of thousands in legal fees. Discovery, expert witnesses, trial costs. By the time it's over, there won't be much estate left anyway. We'll have bled her dry just defending herself. And if we win, when we win, the house goes on the market immediately. Even in this market, we should clear $1.8 million after selling costs. That solves our cryptocurrency losses and gets us back to zero. Then we liquidate her investment portfolio. Another $1.8 million, pay off our mortgage completely, and still have over $1 million left to invest properly this time. Set up the trust for Josh's education. Get the lake house we've been wanting." Derek's voice again. "What about your mom? Where will she go?" The pause felt endless. Then Lindsay spoke, her voice colder than I'd ever heard it. Colder than winter in Alberta. Colder than anything I'd ever imagined could come from my daughter's mouth. "There's a lovely assisted living facility in Airdrie. I've already toured it. Much cheaper than anything in Calgary. $1,500 a month versus $4,000. She'll be fine there. Small room, shared bathroom, but she'll be fine. She won't even know the difference soon enough. Once the court declares her incompetent, she believe whatever we tell her. And honestly, it's better this way. She's getting older. She shouldn't be alone in that big house anyway. This is really what's best for everyone." Josh was crying now, silently, tears streaming down his young face. "Grandma, I'm so sorry. I didn't know what to do. I love you. And they're talking about you like you're already gone. Like you're not even a person anymore. Just an obstacle. Just money they need to access." I pulled my grandson into a hug. This brave boy who'd just betrayed his own parents to protect his grandmother, who'd risked everything to do what was right. You did the right thing, Josh. You did exactly the right thing, and I'm so proud of you. You're more of a man at 15 than your father will ever be. I called Gerald immediately, my hands shaking so hard I could barely dial. When he heard the recording, when he listened to my daughter discussing me like I was already dead, like I was property to be liquidated, he was silent for a long moment. Catherine, this changes everything. This is direct evidence of fraud and elder abuse. With this recording, we don't just defend against their petition, we go on the offense. We make them pay for what they tried to do. The hearing arrived too fast. I sat in the courtroom with Josh beside me, his hand gripping mine so tight it almost hurt. Across the aisle, Lindsay and Derek sat with their lawyer, a slick-looking man in a $3,000 suit. Lindsay looked nervous, playing with her wedding ring. She wouldn't meet my eyes. She knew I knew. She had to know. But she was committed now, too deep to back out. Justice Maria Rodriguez presided, a woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. Lindsay's lawyer went first, presenting their case with practiced sympathy. The photos of me looking confused, Dr. Patel's notes about my disorientation, the documentation of my supposed decline. He painted a picture of tragedy. A loving daughter trying to protect her failing mother from herself, before she lost everything. Your Honor, Mrs. Williams is clearly in the early stages of cognitive decline. Her daughter, Miss Morrison Fletcher, is merely trying to ensure that her mother's substantial estate is protected and managed responsibly before she makes decisions that could jeopardize her own financial security and well-being. Then it was Gerald's turn. Your Honor, I'd like to present Dr. Sarah Chen's psychiatric evaluation, completed just last week. Dr. Chen is one of the leading geriatric psychiatrists in Alberta. She found no evidence whatsoever of cognitive decline. In fact, Mrs. Williams tested above average, in the 93rd percentile, for her age group in all areas of mental competence. He submitted the thick report. The judge read it carefully, her expression thoughtful. I'd also like to present evidence that Miss Morrison Fletcher and her husband have been systematically documenting normal aging behaviors and presenting them as evidence of incompetence. Gerald methodically dismantled every piece of their evidence. The confusion at Safeway. Mrs. Williams was looking for a specific brand her late husband preferred. The disorientation at Dr. Patel's office. She had influenza with a fever of 101 degrees, the forgotten phone number. She'd recently changed providers after 30 years with the same number. Normal, explainable, completely reasonable. But Your Honor, most importantly, I have evidence of the true motive behind this petition. He played Josh's recording. In the silent courtroom, Lindsay and Derek's voices echoed, cold and calculating. Discussing my estate like I was already dead, like I was already nothing. The house goes on the market immediately. Liquidate her investment portfolio. Small room, shared bathroom. She won't even know the difference soon enough. This is really what's best for everyone. The judge's expression hardened with each word. I watched Lindsay's face drain of color. I watched Derek shift in his seat, looking for an exit that didn't exist. When the recording ended, Gerald continued, his voice steady and damning. Your Honor, this isn't a loving daughter protecting her mother. This is premeditated financial exploitation. Miss Morrison Fletcher and her husband are in severe financial distress. They've lost $400,000 in bad investments. They stand to gain over $5 million by having Mrs. Williams declared incompetent. They've manipulated medical records, staged photographs, and built a completely false narrative. All to steal their own mother's life savings while she's still alive and completely competent. Lindsay's lawyer jumped up. Your Honor, this recording was obtained without my client's knowledge or consent. It's inadmissible under privacy laws. In a criminal trial, perhaps, Justice Rodriguez cut him off sharply, but this is a civil proceeding regarding guardianship. And I'm very interested in understanding the true motivations behind this petition. She turned to Lindsay, her gaze fierce. Miss Morrison Fletcher, would you like to explain to me why you're discussing selling your mother's house, liquidating her assets, and placing her in the cheapest facility you could find? All while she's sitting in this courtroom, clearly of sound mind and completely aware of what you're trying to do to her. Lindsay opened her mouth, but no words came out. I watched my daughter, and I didn't recognize her. Your Honor, she finally managed. That recording was taken out of context. We were just discussing hypothetical estate planning scenarios. Hypothetical scenarios. The judge's voice was ice. Hypothetical scenarios where you pocket $1.8 million from selling her house, where you liquidate her investment portfolio to pay off your own mortgage, where you place your mother in a $1,500 a month facility in Airdrie, so you can save money. Miss Morrison Fletcher, I've been on this bench for 18 years. I know financial elder abuse when I see it, and this is one of the most calculated, most cruel cases I've ever encountered. Justice Rodriguez looked at the papers in front of her for a long moment. The courtroom was silent, except for the sound of Lindsay crying quietly. Then the judge looked directly at Lindsay and Derek, her expression hard. I'm dismissing this petition with prejudice, which means it cannot be refiled. Furthermore, I'm issuing a restraining order. Miss Morrison Fletcher and Mr. Fletcher are prohibited from contacting Mrs. Williams or coming within 100 meters of her residence for a minimum of 2 years. I'm also referring this case to the Alberta Crown Prosecution Service for potential criminal charges of fraud, attempted theft, and elder abuse, and I'm ordering that all legal fees associated with Mrs. Williams' defense, which I expect will be substantial, be paid in full by the petitioners. She turned to me, her expression softening. Mrs. Williams, I'm deeply sorry for what you've experienced. No parent should have to endure what your daughter has put you through. I'm recommending that you immediately update your estate plan with appropriate protections to prevent any future attempts at manipulation or exploitation. And I want you to know that you are clearly of sound mind, completely competent, and fully capable of managing your own affairs. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Lindsay was sobbing now, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of someone who'd just lost everything they'd been counting on. Mom, please, she called out as the court adjourned. Mom, you have to understand, we were just trying to help. I turned to look at her one last time, my daughter, the little girl I'd taught to tie her shoes, who I'd comforted through nightmares and heartbreaks, who I'd walked down the aisle at her wedding, who I'd thought I'd known. I understand perfectly, Lindsay. I understand that you were willing to destroy me for money. I understand that you saw your own mother, not as a person, but as an estate to be liquidated. I understand that you were prepared to put me in the cheapest facility you could find, and take everything Robert and I worked our entire lives to build. And I understand that the father you claimed to love so much, who died believing you were a good person, would be absolutely ashamed of what you've become. Josh squeezed my hand. My grandson, who'd had more courage at 15 than his parents would ever have. Grandma, can we go home now? Yes, Josh, let's go home. As we walked out of the courthouse into the bright Calgary sunshine, Gerald walked beside me. Catherine, that was incredibly difficult. How are you feeling? Honestly, I don't know. I looked down at Josh, whose hand was still in mine. But I know that not all family is blood, and not all blood is family. I lost a daughter today, but I gained the knowledge that I raised at least one person with real integrity. That evening, sitting in my house in Mount Royal, the house Robert and I had built our life in, I called Gerald one more time. I need to update my will. The house, the investments, everything. I want to set up a trust for Josh's education and future. Full ride to any university he wants. Money for graduate school if he chooses. Help with his first house. Lindsay gets nothing. Not $1. Not one photograph. Not one piece of furniture. She made her choice. Are you sure, Catherine? That's permanent. Once it's in writing, once you've died, she can't contest it based on these circumstances. I'm very sure. And Gerald, I want it explicitly stated why. I want the will to detail exactly what she tried to do. I want every judge who ever looks at that document to know the full story. Consider it done. Josh moved in with me a week later. His parents had kicked him out the day after the hearing when they realized he'd recorded them. 15 years old, and they'd chosen money over their own son, chosen their greed over their child. But I had a big house and a bigger heart, and Josh needed someone who'd put him first. Someone who'd show him that love isn't conditional. That family means standing by each other even when it's hard. We established a new routine. Breakfast together before school, usually pancakes on his request, though mine were better than Robert's ever were. Homework at the dining table while I read beside him. Weekend trips to the mountains, to Banff and Canmore, showing him the trails Robert and I used to hike. Josh helped me in the garden, planting vegetables where Robert used to grow his prize roses. His young hands in the soil, learning patience and growth and the reward of tending something with care. "Grandma," he asked one Saturday morning as we were pulling weeds, "do you ever think you'll forgive her?" "Mom, I sat back on my heels, looking at this thoughtful boy, considering the question carefully. Forgiveness isn't about them, Josh. It's about not letting their actions poison what's left of your life. Do I forgive what your mother tried to do? No. The betrayal was too calculated, too cruel. Will I ever have a relationship with her again? Probably not. I don't think I could ever trust her again, and without trust, what is there? But I won't spend my remaining years consumed by bitterness. I've got too much living left to do. And now I've got you to help me do it, and that's more than enough." 6 months later, Josh and I stood in the garden together, looking at the newly installed memorial stone. Robert's name, his dates, and a quote we'd chosen together after long discussions. "Family is not always blood. It's the people who stand by you when everyone else walks away." "Do you think Grandpa would have liked this?" Josh asked, touching the smooth granite gently. "I think your grandfather would have loved it. And he would have been so incredibly proud of you. Of your courage. Of your integrity. Of the man you're becoming." My phone rang. It was Gerald. "Catherine, I thought you should know. The Crown decided to file charges. Lindsay and Derek pled guilty to attempted fraud and conspiracy to commit elder abuse. They received suspended sentences and 2 years probation, mandatory counseling, and it's on their permanent records now. They'll never be able to become guardians for anyone. And that means it's really over. They can't come back from this. Your estate is secure. Your autonomy is protected. You can live the rest of your life in peace." I looked at Josh, who was carefully watering the vegetables we'd planted together, his movements gentle and patient. My grandson, who'd saved me, who I got to save in return. "Thank you, Gerald, for everything, for fighting for me when my own daughter wouldn't." That night, as Josh did his homework and I read beside him, both of us comfortable in our shared silence, I realized something important. Lindsay had tried to take everything from me. My home, my money, my dignity, my independence, my autonomy, my very identity. But what she'd actually done was show me what really mattered. Not the house worth $2.4 million, though I was grateful every day to still wake up in the home Robert and I had built. Not the investment portfolio, or the bank accounts, or the financial security. What mattered was sitting across from me, chewing his pencil as he worked through calculus problems, occasionally asking for help, trusting me to guide him. Family wasn't about blood or obligation or inheritance. It was about the people who showed up when everything fell apart. It was about a 15-year-old boy who'd risked everything to do what was right. It was about second chances and new beginnings and choosing each other every single day. Robert used to say that people show you who they really are when there's something to lose, when the stakes are high and the pressure is on. Lindsay showed me she was willing to sacrifice her mother, her integrity, her son, everything, for financial security, for money she hadn't earned and didn't deserve. But Josh showed me that courage and integrity and real love could still exist in the youngest generation, even when it cost him everything he'd known. I'm 67 years old now, and I've learned more in the past year than I did in the previous 67 years combined. I've learned that trust is earned, not given. That it can be destroyed in a moment and never rebuilt. I've learned that the people who claim to love you the most can sometimes be the ones who hurt you the deepest, who betray you the most completely. I've learned that real love isn't about what you say, it's about what you do when no one's watching. When there's nothing to gain and everything to lose. Most importantly, I've learned that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. That vulnerability isn't weakness. That asking for help is courage, not failure. That fighting back against those who would take advantage of you isn't vindictive or cruel. It's self-preservation. It's survival. It's refusing to be a victim. The house in Mount Royal isn't just an asset worth millions anymore. It's home. It's where Josh is learning to be a man of integrity. Where he's learning what real family means. It's where memories of Robert still linger in every corner, in every room, in every photograph on the walls. It's where justice was served and family was redefined on our own terms. And that's worth more than all the money in the world. Thank you for listening to my story. If you found it meaningful, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family? Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely? Your story might help someone else who's struggling right now. And if you want to hear another true story of justice served, click on the video on the left.